Samuel 7 verses 8 to 16. So I'll read that. Now therefore, so shalt thou say unto my servant David, Thus says Yahweh of armies, I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, over Israel. And I was with thee whithersoever thou wentest, and have cast off all thine enemies out of thy sight, and have made thee a great name, like unto the name of the great men that are on the earth. Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and move no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them any more as before time. And as since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and have caused thee to rest from all thine enemies, also Yahweh telleth thee that he will make thee an house. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. And I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the children of men. But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. So, now we'll call upon our brother John to give us his prepared notes on the promises, or the promise made to David.
All right. Oh, that's loud. So, I don't need that. All right, so the promise to David. Who knows about the promise to David? Now, I think you're going to have a chat with Jason what goes on in Sunday school. Or the teachers, or is it just the kids that don't listen? Only 2 children here put their hand up about knowing about the promise to David. Oh, there's more. All right. Who knows about the promise that was given in the Garden of Eden? A few more. All right. So, tonight we're going to be looking at the promise to David. But what I want us to do is I want us to go back and just very, very quickly look at the 2 promises that we've spoken about before. One of them being the promise in Eden. And who can remember what the second one was after the promise in Eden? The Abrahamic. All right, so we've got the Abrahamic, the Edenic, the Abrahamic, and the last one that we've got is the Davidic. So, who can remember where the Edenic promise was given? Whereabouts in the Bible? Genesis, that's a good start. A little bit earlier. Earlier. 3. Verse. What was that promise about? And the reason why I'm going back to these promises is because I feel it's very important to see the link that we're going to find when we come to the Davidic promise, and then how that actually translates, putting all three of them together into the hope that we've actually all got. Well, yes? Never mind. Anyone got anything about can remember from the Davidic? We've done it this year in First Principles. Seed of the woman, seed of the serpent. Yep. Yep. So what was destroyed? Sin. In other words, how was sin going to be destroyed? So sin was going to be destroyed. Assuming that's what you talked about. Otherwise, we're in a bit of strife. All right, the second promise after that. What was it? The Abrahamic. And where did we find that? There's many verses and chapters inside of which book? So we're still in Genesis. 14. 40. 12. So it starts at chapter 12. Then you actually go through chapter 12, 15, 17. Like it works its way through those chapters, and we talk about the Abrahamic promise. Now, what was spoken about with the Abrahamic promise? Uncle Joel spoke about this one. Yes, Sarah? So we've got a land promised. A seed, yep. Seed is stars. All right. Anything else in the Abrahamic? Nope. All right. Uncle John said international. Do we know what he may be talking about by saying international? Is it just related to Israel? Can it be us? When he's talking about the seed. It can be anyone from around the world being a part of that seed. Interesting. We said a set word here. The word seed. Who was the seed? Jesus. All right. So now we're going to come to tonight where we're going to have a look at God's promise to David, or the Davidic. The reason why I've got these three sections here is because I want to focus on this main section that we're going to look at later as to how all these three actually come together and what relevance they have to us. So, it was read for us this morning, 2 Samuel chapter 7. So can I write 2 Samuel 7 next to Davidic? Yeah? Thank you. All right, 2 Samuel chapter 7, and we read from verse 8 through to verse 16. So what I want us to do is let's look at those verses and let's start pulling out, like what we have up here with the Edenic and the Abrahamic, and let's start to look at what this promise actually was about. Okay. Has anyone got anything straight up for me to write down from those verses? Verses 8 through to 16. It's talking about Jesus setting up the kingdom. I don't know if it's 100% saying Jesus setting up the kingdom. It's very close though. Being king. So we're going to have but it doesn't actually say that in there. So inside of here, it doesn't actually specify that Jesus, or name Jesus, as being king. Like what we saw up here, we had to do a bit of work before we found that Jesus was going to be the one. We had to do a bit of work to find out from the Abrahamic that that seed and that promise was coming through Jesus. So yes, you are correct that Jesus is king, but again, we don't see that straight up in this section. What do we see, say, in verse 10? You've all got your worksheets in front of you. In verse 10. What's the word that's missing in that worksheet for verse 10? Peace. So, we've got a time of peace. So in this promise that was given to David, we're told that there was going to be a time of peace. What then do we see in verse 12? It'll be, so let's say, a son of David. So we've got, it's going to be a son of David. Now also in verse 12, right, it says that, and when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee. Okay? So we've again been told there's a seed. Who can see a common theme already running through what we've just got on the board? We got the seed of the woman. We've got the word seed coming through. The promise of Abraham, his seed would be like unto people as the stars or the sand upon the seashore. And we've got the promise to David that it's a promised seed as well. So there's one key word that is starting to flow through each one of these three promises. And we find that that seed ultimately refers to only one person. All right? But he's going to come out of whose bowel? He's going to come from who? David? Is that what we're reading here in verse 12? We read who's it going to come from? David? We said David's son. So yes. All right? And I will establish his kingdom. We haven't mentioned it up here at all yet, but it says, I will establish his kingdom. Who are we now talking about? Are we still talking about David? Or are we talking about someone different? I will establish his kingdom. Okay. So God will establish the kingdom. So we're told there in verse 12 that he's going to be the son of David. He's going to be from his seed. But God was going to establish his kingdom. Who is going to make this happen? No? Who's going to make this happen? God. Who makes that happen? God. It's simple answers, isn't it? But what we're saying is that God is working through each and every single one of these promises. And if God's involved with the promises, what does that mean? It will come true. There's no question about it. If God is involved, then those promises will come true. All right. Verse 13. Do we see anything? He'll build a house. Okay. Now, who's built a house before? No, I'm talking about here. Who's built a house before? You built a house, Aaron. Oh, you haven't. You built a house out of sticks. How did it last? About a day. Did you ask Dad to come and live in it? Why? Oh. He stepped on it. Have you built a house? You built a full house? Oh, in Minecraft, okay. Still, there was planning that needs to happen in building a house. Ask Uncle Axel. He has built a house before. It's still standing. And he's living in it. It takes planning. It takes time. Now, this house here is going to be a physical house. But in the Bible, is a physical house the only house that ever gets spoken about? No. So what are the two houses that we've got? So physical and what? And metaphorical. Don't even think about me spelling that out. In other words, shortened term for us all who are old like me. Pardon? A spiritual house. All right. So here we go. So we're finding a lot of information from a section that we've probably not really looked into in a lot of detail, and we've just read over it and we've gone, okay, what does that actually mean? But when we start putting the three of them together, we're now starting to get a great picture. That's exciting. Anything else in these last three verses, 14, 15 and 16? The king would be the Son of God. Okay. This is starting to get a bit confusing now, isn't it? How is this person mentioned as the son of David, as we saw in verse 12, all right? And now, in verse 14, we've been told it's the Son of God as well. It's not making sense, is it? Initially, upon reading, very quickly, we're not getting the full sense of it. But we see where that'll come out. What's in verse 15? So the mercy of God. All right. And in verse 16, what do we see? So what's the important word there? Forever. All right. So, I reckon one of the first things that we've got to try and work out is, we've been told that a promise that's given to David, there's going to be a time of peace. Okay? We're told that God's going to be in control and God's going to establish the kingdom. We're told that he's going to build a house for God. That house was both a physical and a spiritual house. We're told that Jesus is king and that God's mercy will be there, and that somehow this kingdom's going to live or be there forever. Okay? This was at the beginning of time, not long after the beginning of time, and a little while later. Way before our time. So this is like years and years ago. Can anyone show to me where we've got the Son of David, and I'm probably aiming this at some of the older ones here, the Son of David and the Son of God? Can someone give me a quote? And if Uncle Baruch was here, he would yell it out and then we'd be talking for the next hour and a half. He loves this section. We haven't even turned this chapter up. Where do we think it may be? Okay. I'll let you have this time. What is it? Matthew 1. So what does Matthew 1 say? Next part. Okay. So we've got in Matthew chapter 1, we're told that Jesus Christ, in the genealogy or in the line, is the son of David. He's also in the line of the son of Abraham, but inside of here, does it say that he was the Son of God? Let's turn over to Luke. And in Luke chapter 1. So I'm going to put next to the Son of David, we've got Matthew 1. All right? So what are we going to put next to the Son of God? Luke chapter 1. Who can find that? Where we're told that Jesus will be the Son of God. Verse 32, what does that read? Who? Who will be great? Which is verse 31. So you are right, that is that section, but verse 31 gives us that context there. So verse 31 and 32, right, tells us that it's going to be Jesus, that God will be his father, but he will reign on the throne of David, his father as well. So it brings that all together. So let's put down next to Son of God, Luke chapter 1. And then if you look at verse 33, what does that say? He shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. So in Luke chapter 1, we've tied together David being his father, God being his father, and that a promise of having a kingdom was going to live forever. Yes? Nothing? No. All right. Has that promise been fulfilled? That promise has completely been fulfilled. So it's partially been fulfilled. This promise, has that been fulfilled? Has it partially been fulfilled? You could question that. Has this been fulfilled? Did it get partially fulfilled? No or yes? There's more hesitation around this one. This has never been partially fulfilled. This has been partially fulfilled. Who says yes? Why do you, Auntie Ariel, say it's partially been fulfilled? Which says? Yeah. Okay. So this has partially been fulfilled, and potentially you could have looked at that and gone, well, Solomon was there. Is that not the promise completed? There was a time of peace. He was David's son. He built a house for God. Why did Solomon build a house for God and not David? David was a man of war. David wanted to, and he did absolutely everything to build that house for God, because he thought, why am I living in such a great place and God doesn't have a place to dwell in? He did absolutely everything he could. He did all the planning, the preparation and everything. And then Solomon built that house. Do you want me to write it bigger? The one that Auntie Ariel said. First of Kings, down there, 1 verse 48. All right. So, can we see, I said at the beginning, there is a very important reason as to why we've got them in this order. Why was not this one here given right at the beginning? And don't just say because David wasn't at the beginning. Why was that promise there, not back up here or sort of here in the middle, or this one at the beginning or the end? I'm just saying, why the order like this? And why wasn't, say, this one here right at the beginning or this one at the middle or end? Like, why is it in this order? Pardon? because that's when it was. And it is when it was, but there's a specific reason, like God has done it this way for us. Yes, Aaron? The order that it's going to be completed in? Not really, but yes. There's that reason, yep. What were you going to say, Uncle Axel? Right from the very beginning, God is in control of this. Without God, that doesn't happen. Without God, this can't happen. And without God, this can't happen. But also, as Uncle Pete said, you need a promise that we're going to be able to be there. There's going to have to be people. That's why the Abrahamic also outlined that it wasn't going to be one, but there's going to be a multitude of people. So if you've got a multitude of people, you need a land for that multitude of people to be on. Now, if I've got a land and people, I need someone to rule. So we can see here the reason as to why these three promises are bound all together, and when you start looking at them all, you get the full concept of what we come to. Now, if that hasn't been fulfilled completely, that hasn't been and that hasn't been, what needs to happen? Jesus to come back? Yep. Yep. What else? Sin's destroyed? Yep. What else? Yep. But what else? Let's go back to this one. Something was destroyed that gave life. Did Abraham ever see this land forever? Did David ever see someone sitting on his throne forever? The dead needs to be raised as well. So we've got Christ is needing to be returned, and we're needing the dead to be raised, so that we can then start seeing the complete fulfillment of these three all together in one thing. So, what does that mean it's pointing forward to? Kingdom. All right. So in the kingdom, a kingdom is made up of 7 things. This kingdom at the end of time is going to be made up of 7 things. And the Greek word for kingdom, who knows the Greek word? What? Stephanos? Pardon? What's the Greek word? Uncle Axel? No idea. Specilia. Relating more specifically to the aspects of the kingdom, not actually to what we may originally think of a kingdom as being just the land. It's more concerning the whole aspect of the kingdom. So if we're talking about the seed, we're talking about the Abrahamic promise of the land, and we're talking about the Davidic, and more obviously now that we've looked at a little bit at the Davidic, we can now go into what the kingdom is. The kingdom is that age, obviously, that we're looking forward to. So, I've got 7 points down there. What makes up a kingdom? A king. Okay, we can put that down. Yep. Sorry? Peace? Not really. Laws? You're reading now, aren't you? And someone said it over the back there. All right. Who knows what each one of those words actually means? If we've got 7 attributes here of the kingdom, who knows what a king means? Everyone knows what a king means. All right? So who is the king? All right. So Jesus. Who knows what subjects are? People, but who? No, yeah, okay, I'll put that in there. House of Jacob, but what actually is it? No. The subjects are the people, but who are these people? Non-believers. Or, I'm going to say Gentiles because we all know what that means, don't we? Gentiles. Okay? Territory. What's that? What do we mean by laws? Rules to live under. So they're rules which are both civil and spiritual. Right? What does a constitution mean? A really big document, law. Who likes constitutions? Yeah. It's basically the policies. Which they're based on. The aristocracy. The rich people. You could say they're rich. Who's going to tell me what the aristocracy is? Saints and the rulers. And the attributes, what are they? The rights and the privileges of those that abide by that above. All right. So here we are. We have now got a time period that we're looking at to in the future. Why am I saying it's the future? Is Jesus king right now? If we look through this and we said that we've had this promise, and we've got this Davidic promise down here at the bottom, and we've said that Jesus is king. Is Jesus king right now? He's not the king on the earth at the moment. We can see some of these attributes when we look at sort of Australia. There's land there. People are abiding by rules. We all live by rules, don't we? Who likes rules? Who doesn't like rules? Can I just say that if you didn't have rules, you would be lost. Everyone will put a rule in place no matter what. Even if there are no rules there, we will put rules in place. Therefore, under this kingdom age, we think of the kingdom being a righteous time where we're going to have a righteous judge. We're going to have a righteous king. There is still going to be rules in place, even in a perfect kingdom. All right? So where do we sit into all this? Where do we actually fit into what has been looked at over these 3 nights? In any way do we fit into this section up here? Pardon? The seat of the woman right now? Yes, Auntie Nettie? We don't know what that 1,000 years is, so we've got no idea what that actually will be, other than that God will be all in all. Exactly what that means, that's all we've been told. But what does that mean? How do we know that that's all that's going to be? We've not been told what an all in all is. We've got to. I agree with you, but I'd be very careful about saying that in that all in all period, because we don't know exactly what that is, because we can't understand in its entirety what this means. We don't understand what living forever is. We don't understand not sinning. We don't understand any of that. And yes, there are going to be people around that are still going to be sinning, that are still going to be doing. Pardon? No, I'm talking about this period. And what I'm saying is that we still do not understand this period. I understand what you're saying. I'm very cautious to say that because we don't understand this period in its entirety. We're only told about that it will be all in all. What that actually means, we can have our thoughts about it, but we're not told exactly what that is going to be like. Because to understand this is a nightmare. Yeah. So, just coming back to this, so we are part of this section, but we're not there yet, are we? How do we get into this section? By being part of that seed. And Uncle Joel went to Galatians chapter 3, which talks about the one seed. And how do we become a part of this one seed? Sorry? Being baptized and then being not crucified. We can be baptized, but does that mean to say that we are going to be part of this seed? Does that mean to say that we're going to be part of this if we're baptized? Pardon? Does that mean to say we're going to be saved? I'm being very pedantic here, but to become like that, we need to be judged by God as righteous. We do our best, with God's help, to live that life of Christ. We get baptized to acknowledge that we want to be like him. But at the end of the day, we only get to that point by God's mercy. We won't get there before that. And by being part of this seed here, we become a ruler with Christ, who's the ultimate king. Because right now we don't have there's no perfect king out there, is there? There's no perfect ruler. Is Donald Trump the perfect ruler? No, he's not. But God is obviously using Donald Trump for doing certain things. But he's not the perfect one. Nebuchadnezzar, was he perfect? No? So was David perfect? David wasn't perfect, and yet Christ is going to come through David's line. What it shows to us is that right from the very beginning of time, God had all these promises worked out to all focus back on Jesus, to focus back on the seed, and that without God and without his Son, without that seed, none of this can actually happen. And we're just lucky that we've been given the opportunity to understand, to look at these promises, and to actually be a part of that seed that was promised to Abraham, and therefore ultimately be in that kingdom with Jesus and ruling. All right. We didn't go through that because I wanted to focus on that seed thought process coming right through the whole thing. Mm. Yep. Yep. And there's a lot more that you can go into, obviously, in each one of these sections. And for those who are going through first principles in more detail, or those recently who have, or some of us older ones, when we look back at our first principles notes, that every now and then we should really look back at those first principles notes and remind ourselves of what our core beliefs are actually based on. I remember when I was younger, these got called as the 3 great and precious promises. That these are the basis of our faith. Put them all together, not one on its own, but all 3 of them put together actually creates the base of our faith and gives us that hope of what we're looking forward to. All right. If no one else has got any questions, I'll pass back to Uncle. Took you long enough. All good. Thanks, Uncle John.
Hey. Thanks, John. Okay, so we're all a little bit more clued up on the wonderful promises that God has made, specifically Davidic promises. And we can now have a little bit of a picture of how important they are and how critical it is for us to know those promises, because as John said, it forms the basis of our faith and our belief in the mercy and grace of God. So, thank you all for your participation, and I think we just, unless there's any other comments or points, we'll close with prayer and give thanks for supper. Okay. So if we can just bow, we'll just close with prayer. Loving Heavenly Father, unto Thee all praise and honour and glory is due. We thank Thee for Thy mercy. We thank Thee that Thou hast revealed unto us Thy glorious purpose with this earth, and Thou hast provided the means whereby we might gain an inheritance into Thy kingdom. We thank Thee for the provision of Thy Son, that one that has reconciled us unto Thee through His sacrifice. And we seek for Thy blessing and help in the days that lay ahead, that we might be further instructed in Thy principles and take that step to be in Thy family. We thank Thee likewise for the many blessings of life, for the provision of the refreshments that we're about to partake of. We seek for Thy strength and guidance, that we might be faithful and true unto Thee as we approach Thee through Thy beloved Son, our Redeemer, our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.